All right. We'll begin here in just a second. All right, I'm going to open up YouTube really quick. Going to try to make this fast. Going to look up Theology Central. Go right here. All right, going to open. All right, go here. Turn off live chat. I'm going to move as fast as I can here. All right, close that. Close that. Close that, close that, close that. I do need to open up this podcast app. All right, I got that ready to go. Oh, let me go here. Let's check. Hang on, let's check sermon audio really quick. Why did that just happen? I don't know. Okay, let's hear. Let's go to sermon audio. I think are we going to be the only one broadcasting? Nope, there's one other person broadcasting currently. They've been on 2 minutes. We've been on 1 minute, so we both started pretty close to the same time. Why did that just happen? I don't know. Okay, that's done. All right, go back here. Don't know if too many people are going to tune in right now, but that's okay. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make this happen. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central podcast, making theology central.
Good evening, everyone. It is Friday, August the 29th, 2025. It is currently 6:21 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the Theology Central studio located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, I know it's Friday evening, it's Labor Day weekend, you've probably got 1,000 things going on. Hopefully, whatever is going on, hopefully you're having fun, you're going to have a good time. It's going to be a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and by the time maybe it's going to be a long weekend, maybe you get Monday off work, or you get some extended time to do whatever you want. Hopefully by Tuesday, you'll look back and go, Labor Day weekend 2025 was amazing, it was great, it was wonderful. And I know sometimes when you have extra time, you may be thinking, well, I've got a little extra time here to relax. Maybe I'll look for something to listen to, something that will be informative, interesting, maybe spiritually beneficial. And so what I want to do is just take a few minutes and point you in a specific direction. And then, hopefully you'll go listen. And let me make this very clear. What I'm going to point you to is not something that's very in depth. It's pretty basic, pretty surface level, but it could serve as a good introduction to those who may not know much about it. And it could serve as a refresher and as a starting point that you could then take and go into further study and further discussion and further investigation. Okay. Now I subscribe to so many podcasts. Like the number I subscribe to is insane. And sometimes I've tried to do it before. We have kind of a podcast series that I call the Christian Podcast Spotlight or Spotlight on Christian Podcasts, something along those lines, where I try to tell people about other Christian podcasts. Now, one time I tried to do it and I was doing everything I can. There was a brand new podcast. I tried to tell everyone about it, and that turned negative, and the people didn't like what I was trying to do. And so so that kind of really discouraged me from continuing to try. But there's so much to listen to. There's no way you can keep up with everything, right? So sometimes I think it would be good to have, hey, go check this out and go check this out. But whenever you tell people to check something out, another problem is A lot of times everyone thinks you're saying that you agree with everything on it and everything about it. And it's like, no, I'll point you to things I may disagree with. I'll point you to things maybe I agree with. It's irrelevant whether I disagree with it or agree with it. The issue is this is something that I think is interesting and think that you should listen to and consider. Not because I agree. In many cases, it's because I disagree, but I think you should hear what they have to say. So because I try to listen to things that come from many different perspectives. So in the spirit of that idea, well, I don't even know. This was, I think, August the 18th. So it's been a while. I've had this saved and I'm like, I need to turn on the microphone. I need to do this and I need to do this. So it's a little late now, but I think it was August the 18th. I get a notification from a podcast episode about the Nicene Creed. And I'm like, wait, the Nicene Creed? Ooh, who's talking about the Nicene Creed? This could be interesting, right? I mean, the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Athanasius Creed, or the Athanasian Creed, those, the three most important creeds in Christendom. Come on. Anytime I see discussion about the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, or the Athanasius Creed, or Athanasian Creed, not Athanasius because he didn't write it, but he's named after him. The Athanasian Creed, let's go state it the correct way. I am always like, these are important documents and every Christian should know them. Every Christian should be, I'm not saying have them completely memorized, but they should know everything in them. So I was like, okay, this is good. I'm going to listen to it. And then you know what happened? One day turned into another day. And then I kept thinking, I'm going to talk about it. But then I'd start talking about this or start talking about that. So I'm like, you know what? I have just a few minutes before, there's a lot going on this evening that I want to do for entertainment's sake. So before I go try to have some kind of fun, I thought I would turn on the microphone and say, okay, for your Labor Day weekend, look this up, save it. And when you have a little bit of time, listen to this discussion about the Nicene Creed so that you can, either be introduced to it, get a refresher, or it may spark another round of study on the Nicene Creed, and same with the Athanasian Creed or the Apostles' Creed. But in this case, it's about the Nicene Creed. And the reason why is the Nicene Creed, if we try to date it, it's hard to get an exact date, but somewhere between May and August of 325 AD. So we kind of passed the anniversary of it. So it's a very good time to pull out the Nicene Creed again, especially if you don't go to a liturgical type church where the Nicene Creed is recited on a pretty regular, consistent basis. And in a liturgical setting, typically the Apostles' Creed is repeated frequently, and the Athanasian Creed sadly usually gets ignored, which is kind of frustrating. But all three, everyone should have those three creeds. Read them, know them, and you should, and if you're teaching children, you should use the three creeds and kind of create your own catechism. But I digress. We could get into all of that. So here's what I want to do. I just want to simply introduce this by, I'm just playing part of their introduction, and then I'm going to help you find it, and so that you can look it up on any podcast app. I'm going to help you find their website, going to get you all the information so that you can go find all of their episodes on the Nicene Creed that they just did recently. I think episode 1 was on August the 18th, and then all that week, I think they ended up with 4 or 5 episodes on the Nicene Creed. Again, this is not like it's ultimately designed for a radio program, like a 30-minute radio program. So it's not like an in-depth lecture. It's not an in-depth sermon, but it just makes it easy to listen to on, Labor Day weekend when you're busy doing other things. So are you ready to kind of be introduced to this really quick? Here we go. Here is how the series began and how the episodes started. Here we go.
A secretive sculpture within CIA headquarters, inaccessible to the general public, has held secrets in plain sight for decades. Known as the Cryptos, its 4 panels have puzzled codebreakers and is still holding secrets. The cryptos is named for the Greek word from which we get the word cryptology. It has 4 panels and 1,800 letters carved into copper sheets. Over the last 15 years, its creator has metered out clues, which led to 3 of the 4 panels being solved. 1 panel remains unsolved. Its creator, Jim Sanborn, is now 80 and tired of holding the secret, so he's planning to auction it off. The secret, that is, not the sculpture, and it'll go to the highest bidder. Mysteries captivate us, but there was never a greater one than that which God himself revealed through Jesus Christ, that God would become fully man and bring salvation through the cross of Christ. Welcome to Haven Today on this Monday.
Okay, now I love that introduction. The Cryptos and CIA headquarters, this sculpture. I was kind of fascinated by that. I'm like, I think I need to look that up. So that is already fascinating enough. But I love how, well, the Cryptos fascinates people because it's about mystery, trying to understand this. And well, the greatest mystery is God sending his son, true God, yet true man. All right, okay, the incarnation, the hypostatic union. Okay, all of this about Christ. Okay, that's interesting. So they did a very good job with that intro, a great hook, and the name of the program is Haven Today. Haven Today. So you can look it up on any of your podcasting apps, Haven Today. I'll look up the website here in a minute. Maybe they'll give the web address here in a second. And if they do, then I won't have to look it up for you. But Haven Today, and they're using this to set up a discussion about the Nicene Creed. So let's see how they do this. They're going to tell you about a book about the Nicene Creed that, well, you can support their ministry to get the book, but I'm assuming you can just get the book on Amazon. I haven't looked it up yet, but anytime you can get a book on the Apostles' Creed, Nicene Creed, Athanasian Creed, you should absolutely do that because, well, the more you know about those 3 creeds, I think are important. They're so fundamental and foundational to historical Christianity. I mean, yeah, everyone should know these creeds. So you may want to write down the name of the book. So if you don't have anything to write with, you may want to grab that. And then we're just going to, all I'm trying to do in this episode is tell you to go listen to it. I'm not here to necessarily take it apart. Maybe it will spark some discussion that we'll have here on this podcast about the Nicene Creed. But all I want to do here is just say, here it is, go listen to them discuss it. Okay, So what we need to do is get the name of this book, and they're going to tell us, I think, right now. Here we go.
David Wolin sharing the great story that's all about Jesus, and today we start a series called Fully God and Fully Man. It's been an interesting month here at Haven. Earlier we focused on what makes us human. From there, a discussion on AI and what you think about it, where you draw the line, or if you think there's a line at all, it comes down, much of it, to your answer on what makes us human.
And you may want to go check out those episodes anytime Christians are talking about AI, well, we were just talking about it earlier today on this podcast. So what does it mean to be fully human? Well, if you listen to our discussion about Alien Earth, the new FX program on Hulu, and we talked a little bit about what does it mean to be human. So in some ways, they've kind of talked about things that very much fit into things we have talked about. So now they may have a different take and a different perspective, but you may want to go listen to that as well. But Fully God, Fully Man is the name of the series, but it's really about the Nicene Creed, and they're getting ready to tell us about a book. So get something to write with. Here we go.
And our answer, of course, is it's our Creator. He's the one who defines human. And not only that, 2,000 years ago, he showed us what it means by becoming human himself. Now today, we pivot to this vital core Christian belief that Jesus Christ is fully God and fully man. Christians have always agreed to disagree on minor points, but this is not one of those.
Now, I don't know about if Christians have agreed to disagree on minor points. I don't know who says that. Christians have always agreed to disagree on minor points. First of all, who gets to determine if a point is minor or if a point is major? Who's the one Is there a pope that says, we're going to agree to disagree on this point because it's minor? You may say it's minor. I think it's major. Some people will say, well, baptize a baby, don't baptize a baby. Oh, that's minor. Some people will, there's lots of different things that people like to say are minor. The thing is, if it was so minor, you wouldn't have all kinds of different denominations and all the divisions within Christianity over 2,000 years. So I will say there's no minor issue because the color of a carpet can split a church. So yeah, the reason there's a church on this corner and one right across the street is because they can't agree to disagree. They go their separate ways, different churches, and whatever. So I don't agree with that, but I do agree that the issue of Christ being truly God, truly man, the hypostatic union, is not a minor issue. I do agree it's a major, major, major issue, and I say it all the time when I listen to sermons and teaching. Whenever I hear pastors start talking about the Trinity or the hypostatic union, Christ, true God and true man, I always get very nervous because they tend to, I'm not saying they do it on purpose, but they tend to slide over into absolute full-blown heresy, especially when it comes to the Trinity. They'll say the Trinity is one God manifesting himself in three different ways. Well, that's modalism. That's Sabellianism. That's a full-blown heresy. No, that's not Trinitarian doctrine. So, and the same thing when they start trying to talk about Christ, the hypostatic union. And the reason many cases they're not precise in their language is many cases is because they have abandoned, disregard, or ignorant of, creedal statements, these historical creedal statements that in many cases will help reacquaint us with, I think, more precise language. Now, we can get into a whole discussion how some people will argue against the creeds, but yeah, you get the idea. All right, so let's see where they go. Remember, they're going to tell us about a book. So what's the name of the book?
And so my goal in this program is to explain why, for 1,700 years, defending the biblical truth that Christ is truly God and truly man has been inseparable from what it means to be a Christian. The issue came to the forefront before the fall of Rome, when Christianity had become the recognized religion of the empire, and in that new season of peace, there came into prominence a man who, in today's world, we'd call a celebrity influencer. His name was Arius, and what did he do?
I think he was trying to defend and contend for the oneness of God, that there is, we serve one God, we are monotheistic, but he did so at the expense of Jesus. He devalued the deity, the position of Jesus Christ, and there was one famous phrase that he kind of was known for, talking about Christ. There once was a time when he, referring to Jesus, was not. And so he believed that Jesus came into being. Certainly he revered him highly, but certainly did not regard him as God in human flesh.
I literally shuddered when he said that. My guest, Nate Pickowicz, is a pastor and an author, and as we mark the 1,700-year anniversary of the writing of the Nicene Creed, it seemed like the right moment to talk about why that council convened and what it was defending. Nate will be back with us in a moment, and today we're offering his book, which brings these ancient words, which Christians have rightly held dear for millennia, into the present. It tells the stories. It helps us understand why something like the Nicene Creed still matters and what's at stake today. The book is Christ and Creed by Nate Pickowicz. This is our way of saying thank you for your gift of support to this ministry of Haven. Today, still, the clarity of the gospel and the defense of the faith matter as much as ever, and with your gift, you're helping Haven do precisely that. Would you give us a call and make your gift at 865-HAVEN, 865-HAVEN, or you can give online at haventoday.org. Again, the website, haventoday.org. This is Haven Today.
All right, so the website's haventoday.org. You can go there, listen to all the programs, or you can look for Haven Today on any of your podcast apps. You can look for all this series about the Nicene Creed, 1,700 years. They mentioned that twice because we just passed the 1,700th year anniversary, right? And the anniversary would be somewhere between May and August when the council convened. The actual publication of the date when it's of the creed probably early August for the actual creed, but 1700 years. And you have Christians today who couldn't even tell you anything about the Nicene Creed. And when you hear Christians talk about the Council of Nicaea, oh my goodness gracious, I lose my ever-living mind when I hear people, Christians, non-Christians, they will say things about the Council of Nicaea, and you're like, that did not happen at the Council of Nicaea. That was not even addressed at the Council of Nicaea. What are you talking about? I'll never forget. I had so there was a time, they no longer come to my house, but they used to come to my house a lot. Now, when I lived in Nebraska, the same thing happened. I would get Mormon missionaries. The first two would always show up. I'm always respectful, let them talk, and then they'll say they'll come back, and then I have questions for them. I always take the Book of Mormon or whatever books they will give me, and I will always, and the Book of Mormon, I'll read it and read it, and all my questions in many cases will come from the Book of Mormon, because in some cases, the Book of Mormon, argues against the very teaching that they teach. But we could get in a whole discussion about that. So I will ask all kinds of questions, and then typically what happens, they will leave, and then they decide to come back and they bring in the big guns. They'll bring in one of the leaders to try to come, I guess, correct me, or I don't know what they try to do. And it always usually ends pretty respectfully, but it always ends, and then they don't come back, right? Now, Jehovah's Witnesses, it never goes as well. They will show up. They can try to talk. They don't really want you to do much talking. And with Jehovah's Witnesses, they've given me books. But after like 2 or 3 visits, if I don't basically convert, they ask for the books back, which is the most insane thing I've ever encountered in my life. You gave me the book, and then they'll just show up on a random Saturday. Yes, we need our books back. Well, you gave the books to me. Well, sorry, we want the books back. And sometimes I want to say, no, why don't you get off my front porch and walk away? You gave me what is this? Okay, the Mormons never ask for the books back. And so I really appreciate that, because I'll take and, have anything. But here in where the studio is located, I had some Mormons show up here. Once again, good conversation. Then they came back, and then it was a Saturday, and a van pulled up right in front of my house. And it was like, 8 people, 9 people, they all come in, and they brought everyone in. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'll never forget that the conversation, they started making claims about the Council of Nicaea. And I was like, I wanted to lose my mind. That is not what happened at the Council of Nicaea. I can remember being at Dallas Theological Seminary, and there was a debate with Bart Ehrman, and was it Dr. Wallace? I think it was Dr. Wallace, debating Bart Ehrman. And some Christian comes up to ask a question and starts saying these ridiculous things about the Council of Nicaea. And I'm just sitting there going, what is happening? And Bart Ehrman and Dr. Wallace was like, no, that never occurred at the Council of Nicaea. Where did you get your information? I watched a YouTube video. Who knows what? It's just insane. So that's why more and more Christians need to know the truth about the Council of Nicaea, not the conspiracy theories about it, the truth. And they need to know the Nicene Creed, just like the Apostles' Creed and the Athanasian Creed, because they are foundational to Christianity. So you should get that book, and you should go look up this series and listen to all of it. Well, let's listen to a little bit more. Again, the goal here was for me just mainly to point you to them so you can go listen, but we're already this far in. Let's at least listen maybe to the first segment. Here we go.
I'm David Wolin, and joining us today is Nate Pickowitz. He's a pastor. He's an author of several books, and the title of one of them actually got me smiling, How to Eat Your Bible. So, Nate, welcome to Haven today.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, I wanted to talk with you today about another book that you've written, Christ and Creed, the early church creeds and their value for today, and the timing of our conversation. This topic is on purpose because we're within a few weeks, I understand, of the conclusion of a council that was convened 1,700 years ago, the council from which the first draft of what's known as the Nicene Creed emerged. And, personally, I believe this is vitally important for us to be talking about today. I've already been convinced of that, but we have a whole wide range of listeners from all kinds of backgrounds. And for some, the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, those are so familiar they could probably just recite them from memory. But I'm certain about this. For others, it feels totally foreign, possibly maybe a little bit suspicious. I know this is a sentiment that you've encountered before, right?
Yeah, so very similar to the second grouping there. I grew up going to church, but I don't think I was even familiar with any of these creeds until I was much, much later. In some cases, actually, I think once I even got into ministry, I wasn't super
Hmm.
familiar with them.
I will always be blown away by that. You can meet people who've been going to church. You can find teenagers who grew up in church youth group. Went to pizza parties. They played capture the flag. They went to amusement parks. They did all the dumb stuff youth groups do, but I don't know the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed. People have been to church 15, 20 years. They don't know the Apostles' Nicene Athanasian Creed. And sometimes I'm like, you're a part of a faith, but you don't care enough to know about the history of the faith, which you claim to be a part of. Yeah, I'm a Christian, but you don't even know the basic history of Christianity. You don't even know even if you don't know the name of the 7 ecumenical councils, I mean, you should at least know something about what transpired in those councils, right? And I know that people don't, because when I did an entire series on the ecumenical councils before, people were just completely clueless. And I'm like, what is happening here? What is going on? Even my church at the very beginning did not even know the creeds. And I'm like, how is this humanly how can this be possible? How? I don't understand. So for those who were in a liturg, and what's sad is those who sometimes were raised in liturgical settings where the creeds were repeated over and over and over, they just repeated them and never stopped to go, well, wait a minute, where did this creed come from? When it was written? What was going on? They just recited the words and then went, I guess, to lunch. I don't want to know the origin of those words. Maybe you want to know where they come from. Maybe you have some kind of question. I don't know. But so it's either you have some who just go through the motions and don't even care, and you got others who don't know and they don't care to know. And it's I don't understand. So, I don't know which group you're in, but care and know the Apostles' Creed, know the Nicene Creed, and know the Athanasian Creed. Know the creeds. Know them. Read them. Think about them. Study them. Oh, I'm not saying you do that all the time. You do and read and study other things, but every once in a while, circle back. Go sit back down. Go through each line of the creed. Think of all the implications. Look up scriptures that you think support those sections that you're not taking out of context. And just really think about that. You can write questions based off each line of the creed and create your own Q&A, basically a catechism. There's a lot you can do to reinforce or you could, get this book on that they just mentioned so that you can, learn more and then study all the history of it as well. But here we go.
I'd heard the Apostles' Creed. I'd read it before. But when I got into, Nicene Orthodoxy, the definition of Chalcedon, all these early church creeds, I had maybe read them, but I was not familiar, and nor did I understand the value and why they're so important to study, understand, learn, retain. So my heart was to write an accessible book. So many of the materials out there are so academic,
Right,
and so scholarly
and thick.
and thick,
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a 2-inch thick book of something you're supposed to understand, it's really off-putting. So
Yeah.
my goal was to just, do some study. It was far deeper than I originally anticipated when I wanted to write the book. But just to provide a resource for most people to be able to just access the material, get a little history and have a little bit of commentary on these early creeds. And so that was the basis of the book, was just to try to help churchgoers in understanding the basics of these creeds.
What just utterly ticks me off there is some of these books are thick. Some of these books are academic. It drives me nuts. It's always like you've got to make everything accessible. Christians do this all the time. It's like in preaching, you're told, don't preach above a 7th grade level and do this. And the book needs to be accessible. Stop that. For some weird reason within Christendom, they treat Christians like they're idiots, like they're stupid. Oh, you can't read a thick book. That's only for people who go to seminary. Oh, you can't read an academic book. That's only for smart people. and you normal church-going people, you're just simple folk. You're stupid. I hate when you talk down to people. I used to get so tired of that. When pastor was like, you can't cover that. You'll lose your people. Who are you to tell me I'll lose my people? Well, it's difficult concepts. Well, guess what? It's my job to make the difficult accessible. And you know what? And if it's too difficult, I'll give them a ladder so they can climb up to it. I'm not going to dumb it down. And it's always amazing how my church, located in the middle of nowhere, Texas, a lot of people who I don't even think had much of a college education. I don't think many did. Some did, some didn't, but none of them were like, pursuing higher degrees of education. They were able to understand. Now, he said the Chalcedon definition. I tend to say the Chalcedon definition, the definition of Chalcedon. That's a hypostatic union. They could understand that. They understood the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, the Athanasian Creed. They understood concepts, all the Christological heresies. They were able to understand it all. I just hate that. Well, I got to give them a book that simplifies it. Now, that's wonderful. For some people want a simple book, great. But I just hate that we think that Christians can't read a thick book. It's like, well, they're Christians. Christians don't read thick books. Now, Christians can't do that. Oh, well, we went through a period of time where kids were reading what? How big was a Harry Potter volume? 9,000 pages? Kids could read that, but Christians can't read a thick book. Oh, how dare they could fall apart. It's beyond their mental capabilities. I know I'm going a little hyperbolic about it, but I don't like that language. But the name of the book is Nicene Creed, the Early Church Creeds and Their Value Today by Nate Pickowitz, I think is how you say say his last name. It is the first name is Nate, Nate. I think I said Nick. Nate is the correct first name. Nate Pickowitz. Wicks, I think, is the last name. It's spelled Pickowicz, and it's 112 pages. Ugh. See, that all makes me weep. You're going to talk about Christ and the creeds and the early church creeds, and you can go ahead and do it in 112 pages? Oh, that's sad. But hey, it's still a book on the creeds, and so it's worth getting. I don't think it's worth $12.99 for paperback or $9.99 for the Kindle for 112 pages, but hey, consider it. But let's listen to what they have to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I found this book incredibly helpful. I think you succeeded. And I really appreciate, actually, this is just a trend in a lot of modern Christian publishing, which I think is a really good one, which is to try to keep the books, a little bit thinner, a little bit more streamlined, so that what you're reading page by page is really meat and more meat, every time you flip the page. And that's what I found with this book. And we will talk, I'm sure, maybe a little bit more abstract, a little more theological later on, because I do want to talk about why it's so important for today. But, for me, I think getting into the story, into the context of just what was going on in the time in which this creed was written, sort of personalized it, sort of made it less abstract, made it a little more real, made it a little more relatable. And suddenly I was able to kind of put myself into the shoes of a Christian at that time and go, oh, I get it. I like that now. This makes a lot of sense why something like this even came into existence. And so would you mind taking us back there and just kind of walking us through that time period?
Yeah, so you're talking around, the 4th century, early 4th century. The Council of Nicaea was 325, so you have to go to a couple of years leading up to that. Until 313, Christianity was largely illegal in the Roman Empire. So before 313, you have persecution of the church. So most believers, if you're a Christian at that time, you're just trying to stay alive. You're trying to meet with other brothers and sisters in Christ. So there really isn't a lot of opportunity for serious doctrinal formulation. There are no seminaries as we would consider them today. It's really just a church trying to live their life connected to Christ, growing in Him, a vibrant life. So after 313, something called the Edict of Milan is passed, and now Christianity is no longer illegal. Now it's actually becomes the official religion of the Holy Roman Empire. and things begin to change. You know,
Yeah.
things open up a little bit. And so, right around that time, you have Alexandria was a key city
Right.
in the empire at that time, and you have this teacher, this presbyter named Arius, and
Yeah.
he's teaching the Bible, and he starts to become really popular, and he's trying to wrap his head around, okay, who Jesus is. And he begins to teach this Bible study, and word begins to spread that he's saying some things that we don't really know if we agree with.
Yeah.
And I think it's very easy to demonize some of these people. I think to Arius's credit, if I could even say that,
Hmm.
to his credit, I think he was trying to defend and contend for the oneness of God, that we serve one God, we are monotheistic, but he did so at the expense of Jesus. He devalued the deity, the position of Jesus Christ. And there was one famous phrase that he kind of was known for, talking about Christ. There once was a time when he, referring to Jesus, was not. And so he believed that Jesus came into being. Certainly he revered him highly, but certainly did not regard him as God in human flesh.
Now, if you hear that teaching of Arius, that there was a time Christ did not exist and he came into existence, I mean, you just look to modern day Jehovah's Witness, the teachings of Arius, they persisted, they continue. And so it's right there in kind of modern day Jehovah's Witness. I mean, that may be an oversimplification, but it clearly continued and it still exists. So you have it right there. And I love the history. Now, we do hear a little bit, I think this is an important principle. He says Arius was trying to defend the oneness of God, and in so doing, he undermined, who Christ is. He destroyed basically his deity, his eternality. He ultimately denied that. Whenever you're trying to defend one doctrine, you cannot allow your defense of one doctrine to undermine or destroy or contradict other doctrines. And that's how trying to keep everything working together in a logical way can be very difficult in many cases. Let's see where else they go.
And so his bishop at the time, a guy named Alexander of Alexandria, hears about this. They get into sort of a theological paper war. And then by the time the news gets to Constantine, he's looking to not only squash the division, because he doesn't want division in the empire, but he wants to settle it. He wants to figure, okay, what's right?
Yeah.
So 325, he convenes this massive council of all these pastors and teachers and theologians from all around the empire, about 220 of them. They all show up. They get there in May of 325, and they meet for about a month.
Yeah.
And at the end of that month, they work through all the arguments. They read the Bible together. I mean, they're working together in deep theological discussion and prayer and meditation. And they arrive at something called the Creed of Nicaea, which establishes or reestablishes orthodoxy. And that later, I'm sure we'll talk about it, that later becomes the Nicene Creed. So again, it's not that these councils are deciding or inventing doctrine. Rather, they're trying to wrap their arms around, how do we understand the Bible? How do we understand who Jesus is? And is there a way for us to say that and write that down in a way that we all understand, we can all accept and agree with, and we can all therefore worship God rightly? So that's essentially, I think, how we got to where we get to in 325 AD.
Yeah. It's fascinating to think about it, really. I mean, just a couple of kind of mind-blowing things. One, that up until that edict was passed, whereby Christianity became suddenly legal and not illegal, the church in the Roman Empire had never known anything but really persecution. And, I mean, what a new day it must have felt like. But then all of a sudden, this dangerous doctrine begins to come through. And somebody pointed out to me at one point that that Arius was also like kind of like an ancient songwriter. He was literally like writing a lot of the worship music that the church was singing. So in our day, he would have been charting, and there would have been, at the conferences, people would have been singing his songs, and it sort of highlights the power of what we sing influencing what it is that we believe, maybe without even questioning it very much. And maybe that's partly it can account for how quickly these heresies, these false teachings that Arius was teaching, just seemed to spread like wildfire.
That's kind of interesting. I've never heard that about Arius, that it was a songwriter. So did he use music to spread his teaching? That would be fascinating if he did. I don't think I've ever heard that. I don't know if we have. I'm going to see if the other person responds who wrote the book, because that would be fascinating if that's the case. Let's see what they have to say here.
Absolutely. I mean, that's always the danger, even modern music. I mean, you have to evaluate everything. And I think if Arius had just been some teacher of a Bible study with 5 people in the middle of nowhere, nobody probably would have cared so much. But when that kind of error becomes popularized, that's when the red flags go up. I mean, it wasn't just about Arius and his Bible study. I mean, this was a fast spreading movement that they knew had to be stopped. And so,
okay, well, according to AI, according to several historical sources, Arius used music, especially catchy, popular style songs, to spread his theological teachings. This was a deliberate and strategic move on his part. Arius was a Christian presbyter in Alexandria in the early 4th century who taught that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was not co-eternal with the Father, but was a created being. His core slogan, later condemned at the Council of Nicaea, was, "There was when he was not." The teaching directly denied the full divinity of Christ and became known as Arianism. Arius and the use of music. According to ancient sources, Arius spread his theology using simple, memorable songs set to popular tunes of the time, including sailor songs, market songs, and drinking songs. All right? The primary historical evidence is Athanasius of Alexandria, fierce opponent of Arius. The Nicene Creed, named after him, accuses him of using songs to dismantle his doctrine among the common people. The church historian of the 5th century, and I will not try to say his name, he was a sympathizer for Arius, and he confirms that strategy. Arius himself reportedly wrote now lost work titled, it's in Greek, which means banquet or festivity, written in poetic verse and possibly designed to be sung or recited rhythmically. Arius composed songs after the fashion of the poets of old, setting his doctrine or impious doctrine to music and teaching to the people by means of tuneful courses. Wow. So music made his doctrine accessible. Theological slogans and rhyming phrases are easy to memorize and repeat. And he posed a challenge to the bishops as heresy was basically going viral, not through scrolls and councils, but through music and street culture. Church leaders were outraged that heresy was being sung in the streets. Athanasius and others worked to combat this by promoting Orthodox theology and hymns that affirm the co-eternity and full divinity of Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's why we listen to different things, right? That's fascinating that Arius did that. So then, a lot of times people will listen to a hymn and say, "Well, I disagree with this or this." How wrong can a hymn be before the hymn should not be sung? And it definitely reminds me of how in the popular worship world, there's only a handful of churches that control worship music. Bethel, Elevation Church, Passion, Hillsong. I can't remember. There's like 5 that basically control most of the worship music sung in churches. And guess what? Many of those churches are straight up heretical. So yeah, that's kind of fascinating. I see we just learned something.
I mean, that same kind of thing exists even today.
Right.
I mean, it's so easy for error to travel, and we just have to be diligent to contend earnestly for the faith. So yeah, it's a real danger.
Yeah. And all believers, all of us are constantly sharpening and reforming our theology all the time. We're reading God's word and realizing that's something I hadn't seen before. And we correct in alignment with God's word. We were talking just a second ago, the word heresy was used. That's a big scary word, as it should be. With Arius, it really crossed a line. It wasn't that he had just made an error, hadn't really realized it, came to see the error of his ways and repent of it. That's not what he did. One, he's a very well versed, knowledgeable teacher. But then also, when confronted by brothers in Christ, he dug in his heels and said, "No, I refuse to budge." And at that point, something like the Nicene Creed became absolutely necessary.
That's right. I mean, there's even a story. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek, sort of a funny story because of the nature of the characters, but we don't know if it's true or not. But rumored that Nicholas of Myra, who we know now is Santa Claus. It's not Santa Claus, obviously, but the Bishop of Myra, Nicholas, we believe, was at the Council of Nicaea, and there's a story that goes that when they were listening to the errors of Arius coming out and basically defaming the name of Christ, that Nicholas got so flustered he got up, walked across the room, and slapped Arius across the face. He was then hauled away and put in jail overnight and then released when he was cooled off. But now, again, whether that story is true or not, it's mythological, but it highlights just how close to the bone this is. This isn't debates about modes of baptism. This isn't debates about end times and eschatology. These aren't the fringe doctrines. This is essential. This is core to who we are as Christians.
Baptism is a fringe doctrine. Eschatology is a fringe doctrine. I hate that discussion. Eschatology is not a fringe doctrine because eschatology is greatly dependent upon, and it really sheds light not on what you believe about end times, but the hermeneutical method you use to arrive at your conclusion about end times. So eschatology is not a debate about end times. Eschatology is a debate about hermeneutics, which is not a fringe doctrine. And modes of baptism is just a fringe doctrine? That's ridiculous. I cannot stand that mindset. These things don't matter, but these matter because we say so. But who gives you the right to say that's a fringe doctrine and this isn't a fringe doctrine? Maybe your fringe doctrine is more important than what you... Yeah, that just drives me crazy. All right. But let's try to wrap this up.
Right.
If we don't get the gospel right, if we don't get Jesus right, if we don't get the Trinity right, I mean, this is life and death for the church. And so that was the level of seriousness to these matters, which is why you have over 200 pastors convening together, hunkering down for a month to figure out, okay, we have to make sure we get this right.
Right.
If we get this wrong, it is damnable. But if we get it right, we can contend earnestly. So yeah, it's serious stuff.
And
we'll stop right there. So go look up Haven Today, and look for their discussion about the Nicene Creed. And there's about 5 episodes. Not all of them are called the Nicene Creed. In fact, let me see. I can probably look up the website for you. Do this. First, the book, Christ and Creed, the Early Church Creeds and Their Value by Nate Pickowicz. Okay? Nate Pickowicz. So look him up. Christ and Creed, the Early Church Creeds and Their Value Today. If you look on Amazon, just put Christ and Creed. You should be able to find it in a couple of seconds. If we go to, hang on, I don't want to lose that page here. If we go to, let me go here. If we go to haventoday.org, if you go to haventoday.org, and if you go to the drop-down menu and look to listen, go to Program Archive, and then look for the series Fully God, Fully Man, dated August 18th, 2025. You click on that, and you will get the history of the Nicene Creed, episode 1, which is what we just listened to. We did not complete it. You'll get What is a Creed, August the 19th. You'll get What Do We Believe, episode 3. The Eternal Son of God is episode 4. And One Person, Two Nature, episode 5. And there you have it. And so you should go listen to all of them, and maybe you'll learn more interesting historical facts. And maybe there'll be some things you disagree with, but it will get you into the Nicene Creed, which if you've never studied, you need to study. And if you've studied it a million times, well, you probably need to study it one more. All right. So there we go. It's now 7:07. I'm 7 minutes late to what I was going to do, but I thought this was important to give you something for Labor Day weekend to listen to. So go look it up, Haven Today, or just look on your favorite podcasting app, Haven Today. You should find it. If you can't, let me know and I'll help you out. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great Labor Day weekend. God bless.